Canada has been telling proponents that we have one project, one window for years. Well, we don't. We have one project assessment sometimes and dozens of permitting doors after that. My name is Brady, and I've worked on the regulator side, the policy side, and the operator side of large projects. Today, I want to walk you through what one project, one window actually means in Canada right now, why it's not what you think it is, and what a real version would actually look like. If you're an executive at a mining company, a utility, or a major project, and you keep hearing this slogan, and yet you're watching your projects go through 10 different agencies, this video is for you. Here's what most people believe, that Canada's permitting problem is the environmental assessment, and so if we just fix the environmental assessment, projects would move. Also, the feds have created the Major Projects Office, and so in a way, haven't they already created one project, one review? Well, all of this is true, but it hides a much deeper problem. The environmental assessment is just one layer. Underneath it, major projects still need Fisheries Act authorizations, navigation protection approvals, species at risk sign-offs, crown land tenure, water licenses, heritage permits, utility interconnections, forestry permits, municipal approvals, and the list goes on and on. Different agencies, different timelines, different consultation records, different legal risks. So when Ottawa says one project, one review, they don't actually mean one coordinated authorization. They mean one coordinated assessment, and that is something different. I want to be clear that the main problem isn't that Canada has too many assessments. A major project affects land, water, Indigenous rights, public safety. This requires scrutiny. That's not going away. The real problem is that these approvals behave like separate bureaucratic universes. Each regulator acts with its own mandate, its own risk tolerance, its own information system. Not one of them is responsible for closing the entire file. And I want to be clear who I'm criticizing here, because it's not the staff at DFO, the Impact Assessment Agency, or the Major Projects Office. They are doing the job that they've been asked to do. I'm criticizing the system that requires them to only look at their decision, when none of them is responsible for the delivery of the entire file. That's not laziness, that's rational behavior inside of a fragmented system. A regulator faces real risk for making a legal mistake on their file, and they don't face any reward for accelerating the decision of another agency. So they maximize their own statutory defensibility. Honestly, any rational person would do that. The result? We get sequential reviews instead of parallel ones. Consultation that's duplicated across permits. Indigenous nations getting asked the same question by 5 different agencies. Accountability that diffuses every time the permit stalls. And let me be transparent. Fragmentation isn't the only part of the system that's slowing projects down. Market conditions are real, political opposition is real, but it's the part of the system that we can fix without asking whether major projects should be built in the first place. And that makes it the highest leverage reform on the table. Before I get into the fix, I want to name something that's actually working. Cedar LNG in Northwest BC. The feds, the province, and the Haisla Nation worked together from the very beginning. The Haisla Nation was an equity partner from day one. The 3 layers of government coordinated the approvals process from beginning to end. They co-shaped the process. That sequencing is the structural reason that Cedar LNG worked. The BC Environmental Assessment Office led the federal review under a substitution agreement with deep Haisla technical involvement. And ultimately, the project was approved in March 2023. The feds, the Haisla Nation, and the BCEAO deserve credit for this file. But I want to be honest. Cedar LNG was likely the easy example. We had one mature provincial regulator, one nation as an equity partner. This model likely doesn't cleanly apply to an interprovincial transmission line, or a critical mineral project involving 15 nations, or a challenge from a municipality. Cedar LNG shows us that an integrated process can work when conditions are right. It doesn't show us that these conditions are common. So then, what would one project, one window actually look like? Picture a fish's spine, but instead of a fish's spine, it's a procedural spine leading to multiple statutory decisions. Now, the statutory decision makers still stay where they are. So, DFO is still issuing Fisheries Act authorizations, the Impact Assessment Agency is still completing their reviews, and the provinces maintain control over things like natural resources. What changes is the architecture around them. One integrated project schedule covering the main assessment and any material federal or provincial permits. One named senior coordinator who leads the file, one integrated project record, one integrated consultation record. The permit reviews run in parallel, not in sequence. So, how do we make this work? Because it never works when it looks like the feds are ramming something down the province's throats. Anybody remember the carbon tax? This has to be a coalition of the willing. Federal, provincial, indigenous coordinators steering the agencies through negotiated agreements that they help design. Why not see if this works? A pilot on the next 10 major Canadian projects with a public dashboard that explains when things slip and why. 2 things to flag. First, Ottawa already has a piece of this. The Major Projects Office can now issue a single conditions document for nationally designated projects. That's a real tool, but it only applies to federal permits and to a narrow slice of projects. That isn't a national one-window system. Second, the spine model gives First Nations the decision-making authority that they've been fighting for. A spine model that didn't would probably get sued, and it probably should. I will go more into partnerships with First Nations in another video, but just know for now that the spine model and partnership go hand in hand. They're 2 sides of the same coin. So let's review. It's not the number of permits that are the issue. It's the ecosystem to process them coherently. The proponents who figure this out will start pushing for and demanding integrated reviews with the feds, the provinces, and Indigenous nations. The proponents who keep waiting for one project, one window as a federal product with a bow will keep being surprised by their own timelines. Let's be honest, one project, one window has until now been more of a slogan than an actual system, and proponents have paid for it. If you're one of these proponents and what I'm saying is resonating with you and you're looking down a dozen different permit applications, I'd be curious what you're seeing on the ground. Please reach out or leave a comment. To everybody else, thank you for watching.